across all worlds, he came for us.
I finished Bible college, and my wife said, "You know, you'd make a good psychologist." And I thought, oh, that's kind of an intriguing idea. Then I looked at how much schooling it would take, and I've never been much one for doing that. And I thought to myself, nah, I think I'll start a band. But what's funny about
Well, look at all the songs. What are the great songs?
right,
If it's not psychology.
right. Well, my joke is that eventually I became a family pastor, and I thought they get paid a lot less to do the same thing.
That's true.
But
Well, I've studied. I could easily have a PhD in psychology.
yeah,
I've read tons and tons and tons of stuff, but it was never, for me, an interest in mere ideas. Because I can look at I'm 65 now, and I can look back at my life, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm talking about my own personal journey,
Right.
internal to me, without respect to family or friends or anything else right now.
right,
And I can see that when I was very young, I encountered Jesus in joy.
right,
And then, for whatever reason, it disappeared. That disappearance was the greatest gift of Jesus to me in my journey. Now I see that. And because two things. One is I knew that Jesus is real
yeah,
and that he is the answer,
yeah,
but I didn't know how.
yeah,
And my frustration with institutional religion lies right there.
right,
Why are we faking this?
right,
Why are we not getting together and saying, please, Jesus, meet us and show us how we can walk with you and experience your joy that you have with your Father?
yeah,
That was part of the frustration of it,
Right.
but that's also part of the calling, because there was no way to go back. And I never, if you'd have told me when I was 15 years old that I was going to give my life to theology and preaching, I'd have told you, because to
right,
me, theologians were people that sat in a tower and read religious insurance manuals and just talked about it.
right,
And I'm like, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
I've experienced joy, and I know it's real, and I can't get to it.
yeah,
You know, so my journey through a variety of different denominational situations makes sense.
yeah,
I'm not condemning anybody.
yeah,
I'm a man on a mission, and I didn't know I was.
right,
And I have been given a litmus test that calls out Skubla, not to condemn, because everybody's on the same journey, whether they know it yet or not. But in order to say that's not it, and fine, that's not what I'm after.
yeah, yeah,
Because I've experienced it. And so I look back and see, my goodness, the great gift that Jesus gave me was, I'm not going to withhold my joy from you forever.
right,
You're going to discover it from where you are right now.
right,
And you're going to leave a paper trail. Are you going to leave a conversation? Are you going to leave insights for people
yeah.
that are on the journey that want to follow? And I would say, I've shared this with you before. And just the other day, I don't remember which episode this was, where it was in the whole scheme of things, but we were looking at the prologue of John. And there for a few seconds, I was like
yeah,
unable to. And that, Jesus told me a long time ago, you're going to know that you are arriving at the experience that you have longed for since those early days, when you cannot read the gospel, the prologue of John or the first chapter of Ephesians without falling out on the floor in stunned wonder.
Yeah.
But you see, in order to get there, the Lord had to take me through a journey which is going to evangelize the foundations of my Western mythology.
right,
You know, and that's not easy.
right,
You got to rethink everything, including God and tacos. You know, but that's only one part of the story.
Yeah.
The other part of the story is inside of us. He showed me this. That inside, I saw a beaver dam. I was in Colorado, looking down this valley, high plains valley,
Veil, right,
looking at Vail Mountain.
yeah,
And even though it's spelled Vail, I got the point. And all of a sudden, that valley became a beaver dam. Now, get me, this beaver dam was so big it could easily stop up the Mississippi River.
Right.
The logs at the base of this thing were as big as mountains.
Right.
And I'm looking at this, and I said, Jesus, what is that?
This is an open vision, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
for a Presbyterian, buddy, this is cooking. And a recovering Presbyterian, as I like to say.
I love it.
But anyway, he said that beaver dam is blocking the river of living water from flowing through the nations. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, you have one of these inside of you, and so does everybody else. We're not talking theology now.
Yeah, one of these dams or one of these logs.
No, the whole thing
Oh, right. Yeah.
is everybody, and
Yeah.
there's enough water coming out to almost fool us,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But Jesus promised a river,
Yeah.
not a trickle.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the business of trying to create a river, because Anyway, I said, help me, Jesus, understand this. He said, those two huge logs at the bottom that are as big as a mountain, those are two fundamental agreements that my people have made with darkness without knowing it.
Yeah.
I said, well, what are they? Number one, the lie of separation,
Yeah. Right.
that you are separated from me and my Father and the Holy Spirit. That is a lie.
Yeah.
It's never been true. But the whole sort of approach of theology,
Yeah.
and not that, but just your own journey, begins with, I am not included, not loved, not saved, I'm separated. So that's number one. Number two, the log that goes right with it on equal terms
Not good.
is that my Father is not good all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And so I instantly remembered Athanasius and those great quotes that I'd read in college. The God of all is good and supremely noble by nature. That means not just on Monday.
Right.
This is who he is. Therefore, he is the lover of the human race. And so the Lord, in my journey, has systematically evangelized my Western mind.
Yeah.
From the assumptions all the way to the doctrine of God, to understanding the cross, to understanding what Christianity is about, what Jesus was about, what the gospel is about, up to all of it.
Yeah.
I knew that was going on here, but he's also been addressing my agreements and the wounds in my journey.
Yeah.
Because when you grow up in a Presbyterian church and you're told you're totally depraved and you're told you're separated from God,
Right.
and your own earthly dad, who I don't think he meant anything by this, I think this is what he grew up with, he would say, you're born trash, you die trash.
Yeah.
And so, and when he was winding down, I was having lunch from him. He was having some real struggles to get from his head, his mind, to his mouth. And we were sitting there having lunch, and he just blurted out, born trash, die trash. And before I could even rationally process it, I reached over and put my hand on my dad's shoulder, and I said, Dad, that may or may not be true with you, but I come from the Father, Son, and Spirit, and they don't do trash.
That's good. Yeah.
And my younger brother was sitting across from me, and the minute Dad said, born trash, die trash, I literally saw him shrink physically.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah.
And when I said that, I saw him bounce back.
Yeah.
And then I said to my dad, Dad, that's not true of you either. You're not born trash. You've come. Our family of origin
Yeah.
is the Holy Trinity.
Yeah.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. They don't do trash. So the simultaneous journey for me was the evangelizing and reconstructing of my theological mind, and the journey of healing wounds that gave rise to my agreements.
Yeah. Well, we've been hanging out for several days, and our conversations have been, I feel like they're two things. They're obviously we're getting our heads right. And I agree. For me, the greatest transformation in my life was the goodness of God and Jesus as the revelation. So it was the lie of separation. He's going to deal with the lie of separation. And that started with me going, oh, God is as Jesus revealed. He's always good. I'll be stubborn in that direction. And then the lie of separation gets exposed. So those two things we've been dealing. But then we've had these conversations. We haven't done it with the camera yet. But I mean, I know you're well versed in the Enneagram. I know that that's a more practical reality of how do we do this. Because I'll just say this: the most transformation in my life has been in the last 15 years, as that got dealt with me. The lie of separation,
Both the beaver dam and the wounds and all that, and the clarity.
yes, and then it's where the rubber meets the road. I was telling you a story about my wife. We're about to celebrate 30 years, and because this is where it gets real for me.
Relationship.
For me, if it doesn't translate into transforming my relationships with my wife and my kids, if I can't apply it to how I love my neighbor, if it isn't actually transformative, then that's a theology.
Or if it doesn't apply you.
Yeah. If
That's-
it doesn't change me.
It's the application of the life that's in you to you.
Yes.
To your journey and your broken mind.
Yes. And if I can't, if it doesn't transform here and then it doesn't connect here, for me, it's the same thing.
this
I don't
is-
want to study that theology. What you said when you were a kid. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Because what's that? I'm not
The
interested.
study of religious insurance manuals.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. But
But if you can find, because if there is no separation, I love this Paul Young. We had him on the podcast, and
he's one of my great friends.
I absolutely love him. We've spent just enough time together that I'd like to say he's my friend. And
Well, he would say he's especially fond of you.
Yes, he would.
He means it.
He has. But he said this, and when he said it, he just gave me language for my life. I already knew that trust is what I care about most, but he used it, trust is my through line. He actually said that. And when he said it, I went, that is how you describe what I care about most. Because if I can't trust, then there's nothing. I need gravity in the morning. When I swing my legs out of bed, there has to be a cornerstone that I can stand upon. There has to be a reality. What I discovered is there's no separation in the nature of God. He's always good, as Jesus reveals. I can put my weight down on that. I can trust a God whose greater love lays his life down for a friend. He calls all of his friends. And so when I found brothers and sisters, we're family. Jesus calls God Dad, and he shows us what it looks like to live confident in his Father's affection. When I found that as my cornerstone, now I got the thing, because we talk about
that is. I hate to interrupt you, but
No.
this is important.
yeah.
Crossallworlds.com,
.com.
and there will be your books available there, mine,
Yeah.
links to our websites, because there's a bunch of different kind of websites, and your podcast,
Yeah.
and there'll be events posted,
Yeah.
and lots of things. But primarily, that's the way to get to us and find out more about
Yeah.
Jason and more about me and what
Yeah.
we're doing and where this is going and how you can participate. Online classes, podcasts, there's all kinds of things that are
Yeah.
happening.
That's also where you can donate
Yeah.
if you'd like, and I know
Yeah,
that would
please
bless
don't-
us.
please
Yeah. And put this all together, and everything's there. Crossallworlds.com.
That's it.
Yeah, man, this is fun.
That is the point.
That's the point.
We are in a covenant relationship with God.
Yeah.
It's irrevocable.
That's it.
He will not let us go.
That's it.
It's long arc.
Yeah.
It's a covenant relationship in marriage.
Yes.
It's a covenant relationship in friendship. We're going to screw up.
That's it.
We are going to screw up. He will not let us go. And now in Jesus, he's found us in the abyss of our delusion and saying, now come on,
Come on,
guys.
man.
Come on, walk
Yeah.
with me a little bit, because I'm transforming you.
Yeah.
And you don't even know what needs to be transformed. I think of my inner world as a box of loose coat hangers.
Right.
And so for a long, long time, I thought, if I can figure out how to get the coat hangers right, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And I finally just said, Jesus, I don't know what the order is, and I wouldn't know how to get them here.
Yeah.
You take this.
Yeah.
And I could feel he's like, finally, finally. So he's reordering this, and it bears fruit.
Yes.
But this is a long art education of our wills and our hearts. And in that process, clarity is coming. It's challenging, scary.
Yeah.
Clarity of mind.
Yeah.
And the beaver dam is breaking. And the healing is happening.
Yeah.
and it's beginning to flow out. That river's flowing out. And we're not there in the sense of it's a work in progress. And once I realize it's a work in progress, because I'm in a world where, no, you can't say anything until you're perfect.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say something, you have to pretend to be perfect. And I'm like, I'm not pretending to be perfect.
It's exhausting.
20 minutes in, it's exhausting. And then you're beholden to everybody's definition of perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your journey was primarily here, and now you're getting clarity.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's the long game of love, is what you're talking about. That long arc.
It's the covenant.
It's the covenant, and it's before the beginning and after the end, and it's everything in between. It's the we have the saying, family is the long game, and that applies practically. I've seen that apply practically where my wife and I were maybe the crazy charismatics in our younger days, and of course we were, and also had things that were lots of striving attached to our message, of the gospel. But also we were convinced even then in the long game of love. And we became, over time, a safe place for our family.
Which creates trust.
Which creates trust. The long game of love, it creates trust. We became a safe place. But for me, the practical conversations we've had, whether the camera's rolling or not, have been as much about our lives. How does this apply in our relationships? And I was telling you a story about my wife and I, and 15 years in, we were talking about everybody has a suitcase. You told me.
Satchmo, the song. I got a suitcase, take it with me everywhere I go. And then he says, met me a girl, fell in love, and our love was true, and got married. I realized she had a suitcase too.
I love it.
And then the next one he says, we had little children. I think the song was called Suitcase.
Okay.
We had little children, gave them all little suitcases. And I'm listening. Man, that's 15 years of therapy right there.
That's
to get the fact
exactly.
that I left my childhood with a suitcase.
Yeah.
And so did everybody else.
Right, yeah.
And so much of the conflicts that we have in relationships is the baggage that we brought into the relationship has now had time to surface.
Yeah.
And do this.
Yeah.
A lot of people bail at that point. And I don't have any criticism, but I can tell you this. If you're not dealing with your own suitcase, all you're going to do is go back and find the same dynamic again. And in 2 years, you'll be back the same place you were when the first relationship failed.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Yes. And it's the truth.
It's the truth.
But I want to clarify one thing, because we use the language. I use this language of how does this apply to my life?
Yeah.
I want to refine that.
Yeah.
The question is, Jesus, how are you applying your life to my journey?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to apply this to my life, because I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And I know that's not what you mean, but I want to clarify that for the audience and for our discussion.
Yeah.
Is that Jesus Christ is in me with his Father and Holy Spirit. They are applying their life to me, undoing the beaver dam and evangelizing my mind.
Well, that's where the trust is placed.
And that's where trust comes.
That's where the trust comes from, and where it's placed. It's why you can then risk, if you consider it risk, to go to places to unpack the suitcase.
Yes.
Because you get to unpack it with him, and you've found the place. You've found the one you can trust.
Yes.
With everything.
And you finally look in the suitcase, and there's a bunch of crap in there.
There's a bunch of crap.
But you know what is at the bottom of it?
Yeah.
The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
That's it. Because he steps inside our delusion. He's in the suitcase, man.
And he brought his Father and the Holy Spirit with him.
That's
I
right.
mean, I had a friend that was having panic attacks, and he came to me. He's a dear buddy of mine. We were sitting out back of my house, and he was telling me about it. He says, it just overwhelms me. He says, and a lot of times it happens when I'm driving. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I don't need to make some stuff up here. Jesus, you got to give me something. And so I told him, I said, when you drive it home from here and you have one of these panic attacks, I want you to pull over all the way as far as you can on the right side of the road, put the car in park, turn the ignition off, throw the keys in the floorboard on the passenger side and say, bring it on.
Yeah.
I want to see your teeth. I want to know what you got. the panic,
Yeah.
the darkness. So it wasn't 20 minutes after he left, he called me. He said, "You're not going to believe what happened." I said, "Tell me." He said, "I was going across the bridge,
Okay.
and it started happening, but I knew I could make it I could see it, and it was a place to pull off." He said, "I pulled off, and I did exactly what you said." And he said, "Everything went totally black." And he said, I felt like I was falling backwards. I had no reference point, so I don't know. That's just what I felt. And I had no control. I had nothing to hold on to, nothing to grab hold of. And I thought I was losing my mind. And he said, it seemed like everything slowed down, and I sat up. I'm in complete darkness. He said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What?" And he said, "I looked over to my right, and there sat Jesus."
This transformative stuff.
I said, "This is where, yeah.
Yeah.
This is what Jesus. This is what the gospel is about.
Yeah.
I'm down there.
Yeah.
Okay. When you're willing to go there, you're going to meet me,
Yeah.
and I'm going to set you free from all of it.
Yeah.
Nobody gets a vote when you meet Jesus Christ inside your scuba,
Yeah.
inside of your shame, inside of your sin, iniquity,
Yeah.
whether it was
Fear.
done to you. When you meet Jesus and he brought his Father and the Holy Spirit with him,
Yeah.
you meet them in that place, then your dad or your husband or your wife or your pocketbook, nothing gets a vote on how you feel about yourself. That was the question that I went to a counselor years ago. I sat down, I had a woman counselor, and I sat down with her, and she said, "How can I help you?" I said, "I have one question,
Right.
and I'm not going to leave till I get an answer." I knew the answer here.
Sure.
And I had enough experience here, but there was so much stuff in between. And I said to her, I said, "How can I feel good about me without reference to anything on earth? I mean, parents, friends, marriage, money, whatever."
Yeah.
And she said, "You've done a lot of work, haven't you?" I said, "Yeah, I've done a lot of work. I've read as many books on counseling as you have." I said, I don't say that at pride. I'm just saying I've been at this.
That's the kind of guy you are.
Yeah. And this is only part of it.
Yeah.
But she said, "We're not going to be able to do this in one session, but I can help you." I said, "Okay." And I knew that Jesus was the answer. I knew that since I was little. I didn't know how.
Right.
That was the question. How is Jesus the answer to all this mess here and all this mess here? And then the rippling relational messes
Yeah.
that come out of that.
Yeah.
So counseling was very good in the sense it helps you understand concepts like triggering
Sure.
and how you respond when you trigger.
Sure.
And maybe something why you trigger, but then how you're triggering triggers others.
Yeah.
And then they respond, and this whole thing gets into a dynamic of hell in 30 seconds.
Right,
You know,
right.
just by a
Right,
look,
yeah.
by a look,
Yeah, that's
or a
right.
sigh,
Yeah.
or something.
Yep.
You know, but in the end, the answer is meeting Jesus Christ
Yeah.
and his Father, indivisibly one, homousios to patria, of the same being as the Father, and the Holy Spirit, meeting this Jesus inside of the things that you are most ashamed of.
Yeah.
Whether you did them or they were done to you, but you meet Jesus there, that's how this works.
And that's the truth that sets you free.
And truth is reality in John's gospel.
That's right.
That's the reality. If you continue in my word, Jesus says, if you continue in my logos, if you keep walking with me and taking sides with me,
Yeah.
you're going to discover something that is real before you know it.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
I make it real. And as you discover the reality of that in these places in your being, it transforms you from the inside out. The beaver dam starts shaking, the river starts flowing, and things are happening that you don't even know to pray about. Or you can spend your life over here trying to buy into somebody's definition and work the program and make it happen and die of exhaustion.
Or keep putting up facades and keep trying to figure out how to. So I've started the story twice. I'm gonna tell it now because it fits.
I'll be quiet.
No.
But you started it.
Well, it lines up with it. We've laid enough groundwork. It's even more helpful to tell the story. But my wife and I, 15 years ago, halfway into, we're about 30 years in, so maybe even 16, 17 years ago. I think it was 12 years into our marriage. We had suitcases that we had never unpacked.
Probably didn't know you had.
Didn't know we had, and we'd gotten to a spot in our marriage where there would be a look or a sigh, and there was a certain subject where we knew, don't go near that subject, that don't go near, or it's going to get sideways. And so it became one of those things that, you know, you have two choices. You're 12, 13 years in. You have two choices. You can build some walls around your heart, and you can keep,
Which keeps the river from flowing to others.
yeah, which keeps the river from
It
flowing
does
to others.
protect you.
It wasn't. There was no. We were married. We weren't getting divorced. We loved each other, but there was something. There was something there where we needed to figure. We needed to find Jesus at the bottom of it. And I remember even daring to bring it up, just kind of saying, "Hey," because I knew this could become a 2-hour fight. That's what this could become. Where
Bloody mess.
this could become a disconnect. And of course she's a trooper too. She wants to get the solution. And my thing was, hey, I think we need to get counseling. Well, we didn't have any money. I mean, we didn't have 2 dimes. So she's like, I think so too. How are we going to do that? On top of where would we go? Which, by the way, I grew up in the charismatic church where even the idea of getting counseling wasn't necessarily. It was right next to voodoo at one point when so thankfully we'd progressed far enough that we actually had a value.
Well, there would be no need for counseling if the gospel was really being proclaimed.
Yeah.
So it's
But it was good to have we'd come far enough to have a value for it and be able to say it. Anyway, we couldn't afford it, so I went for a walk, and the Holy Spirit gave me this strategy. He said, when you go sit back down together, and you make a decision together. Come to an agreement that I am for you and you're for me, and I know you're for us, and I will choose to believe as we unpack this that you are for us, and you will choose to believe that you're for that I am for us, which it's hard to do when you start getting into the unpacking.
Across all worlds, he came for us. With Father's passion.